I had actor Matt Drago on, and they were loving it. I think I'm really surprised, like how many people into volleyball are also like film and theater people, right? Like, and this is why having these guests really makes it interesting. And we're live, guys. So let me just pretend I'm gonna do my intro. Where am I? Look at me. Look at that. Look at me. Hey, people, what's good? This is the Option Podcast. That looks like Torin Jeffreys. I'm Jason DeBeas. Buckle up. The episode starts right now. Ooh, that blew the doors off the intro, man. Okay, we're good. Headsets back on, man. How you doing, little brother?
I am doing fantastic. Just, doing a little bit of traveling this past week. I was out east. My body still hurts from that, but, planes, little sardine cans we stuff ourselves into for 8 hours at a time. There's got to be a better way to travel.
I think, well, first of all, I agree. I also think that it's amazing that there are people who are taller than me that are totally okay with their leg space, right? I'm not. I'm never, there's no extra room that is enough for me. And I'm already scared of flying anyway. And then there are guys who are shorter than me, right? You can't do it, right? It's just not enough room. So I don't know if it's like a leg thing, femur bone, long thing, or whatever, or just that comes with that. But we're doing a lot of flying this year, and I don't like it, but I got to do it.
Same.
Yeah, just got back from Maui.
Nice.
It was fun. Happy wife, happy life.
With Kelly, as always, happy Jay.
I think so. I think so. Let's get the mic a little closer to you. Give you the volume you deserve, and then I can.
All right.
Oh, listen to that. Ooh, feels like a real podcast. So, guys, Torin Jeffreys, this is the Option Podcast. This is my brother from another mother, a beach volleyball player, former indoor basketball player, huge entrepreneur in all things healthy and all things enhancing your quality of life, because without a good quality of life, the sanctity of life is void.
Yes.
You're like, well put, Jay. I ran into you the other day and you were talking to me about a project. Now we can talk about volleyball. Plenty of time for that. Huntington Beach happened last week. Some people exciting, some people who knew, who cared, right?
Yeah.
And there's a mixed bag of that. So we're going to shelf that because I really am intrigued by your most recent project, and it involves finding ways to have clean drinking water. Torin, the floor is yours. There's a huge association with you, Be Better Media, and some of the partners, and this sounds like something that's big that's coming up.
Yes. So I finally took the leap of faith, if you will. And they say you shouldn't listen to the voices in your head. That's not true. You should listen to them. They give you a lot of good advice.
All the time.
Yeah. But I finally quit my bar job, and I kid you not, like not even a week later, just through somebody that I had already talked to, this one company that something didn't work out. This woman reached out to me and was like, "Hey, we're starting our own thing." And I had just sat down with a couple friends, Wendy Jones, my friend Laura, and we were talking about building like an alternative healing collective, if you will, for people like like Reiki practitioners, yoga practitioners, acupuncture, all of those kinds of things, but having like more of like a collective database and like some sort of system in place that is much more in terms of like guiding people to the right form of care that resonates with them, but like outside of like a traditional doctor's office. So my intuition was like, okay, this woman reached out to you, said they're starting their own thing. You just need to get on the horn with her. So I asked, I was like, hey, can I call you? It's like, sure. So her like WhatsApp craps out, and she's all the way in she lives in like London, right? So she puts me in touch with a gentleman named Jeffrey, and I have a whole thing with like words, numbers, and associated with them. Jason, I kid you not, I put this man's name into this gematria database, which it has a lot to do with like numerical values of like numbers, and the words that we're actually using can have multiple meanings based on their like vibratory capacity or like the numerical scores that you get. It all relates back into, like the Hebrew language, Sanskrit, all these different,
Sanskrit. Yep.
yeah, like all these very mathematically based languages, right? This man's name comes back as 679 in the database, and I kid you not, it's tattooed on my chest. So I'm like, okay, I got to call this guy, right? So I talked to him on the phone, and they're in one sense doing that exact same thing, except they already have funding and like a corporate structure that's very, very different from the way most people are going to be familiar with corporate structure, right?
Corporate structure for what? The nature
For
thing, or
so this company, they're called Goldco Global. They have a number of different avenues that they chose to go forward with. So there's one that's kind of like on the healing collective side of what I was just talking about. This is kind of my backstory of how I ended up like just even talking to this group, let alone where I've kind of found myself in terms of like working with them. But so I talked to this man, Gregory, and then this other woman named Christina the following day. She puts me in contact with I guess you call him the CEO, whatever, the guy who had like you know, the vision to start all of this. His name's John. He lives in New York. And I kind of found myself with somewhat of a mentor in a sense, and also like kind of just it tied into everything that I've really ever wanted to do. So the company itself, again, I still don't have all the information because it's been, getting this thing off the ground on their side is
yeah.
the launch is like soon. But the big piece of one is there's this plant that's been around for a while. It's called Kanaf, that they're working with, that has it's literally like a miracle plant. I kid you not.
How
Like
do you spell that? I want to look it up.
Kenaf.
K
You could
E
also go
A
to their website.
Ken. Sorry, Ken.
AF, I think.
Gotcha.
My
All right.
spelling's terrible. You could also go to their website too. GoldCO global.com.
Gotcha. Actually, I just want to know a little bit more about the plants.
So that'll have everything about the plant on it right now. That's
Right.
the first piece that they've really like got moving forward, is all the stuff with the plant. So there's a ton of information about the plant on their website, but we're talking like can be used to clean drinking water, building materials, bioplastics, cosmetics, creams, food, tea, regenerative agriculture, in terms of the number of crop rotations and whatnot. Dude, it's insane. Like, it's literally insane what this thing is capable of producing.
Well, it's a fiber.
Not, yeah, so it makes fibers,
Right.
but there's literally so many different uses for this, and the things that they're already like involved with in terms of some of the projects and whatnot that I know they're going to go forward with are literally going to change the world.
Well, it's wild because it started as fiber for like rope, like twine, cloth, paper. I'm just gonna, little Wikipedia. Wikipedia is not always correct, but at least to
Yeah.
Wikipedia's credit, like you can look at the footnotes, and the footnotes show their source, and then you can look at the source and you can take it or leave
Right.
it. So Wikipedia will always be useful to me, but I mean, man, if they made a page about me, they'd be wrong in so many ways. Yeah, I see it: engineered wood, insulation, clothing grade, or whatever. But somehow there's this new discovery, or maybe not new, or just this transcended discovery of how it can provide clean drinking water, right?
Yes, it can provide clean drinking water. Again, I'm not a botanist or have anything to do with, like
Right.
those kinds of things. all the information and whatnot that you need, you can find on the website. But yes, it can be used to purify drinking water.
This is
And
big.
it's huge.
This is big because you have people that, like, I met him once, but we're not friends. Justin Wren is an MMA fighter. He was like in The Ultimate Fighter, The House, with like Quentin Jackson, Rampage Jackson, and Rashad Evans, a wrestler. Just dropped everything he was doing and went to the Congo, and because someone had some ideas to get clean drinking water in the Congo, and this guy is in the Congo, and has been. I don't know if he's still there, but it's just, to my knowledge, he's been there for like almost a year or more than more like 2 years. And that's been his goal. And and the reason why I'm even bringing this up is because you were talking about some of the things you want to do in your life, and you and I in different ways had this habit of running towards a problem instead of running away from it. Yours is more in a spiritual sense, and us getting our humanity back, which enhances the quality of life, right? Mine is the dumb Captain America way, like someone shooting up a street and I should be running that way. And impulsively, instinctively, I'm ducking and trying to find ways to go that way, which is, I guess, not the smartest thing in the world. And I'm not trying to call myself a superhero, right? But I guess I'm just trying to convey, we have different ways of running towards a problem. And that's why I got you on the podcast. We had this conversation, and I could have had anyone to talk about volleyball today, right? We both know that. I mean, Huntington Beach just finished, right? I already had Cayman and James Shaw a couple of weeks ago. He's doing terrific, but I like that. I want to know more as we continue to go in the beginning stages of the project. And I think I've interrupted you enough. I wanted you to carry on how it started and where you are now. And then we can explore where you want to go.
So what we had talked about when we bumped into each other the other day was, I had this thought as I was talking to somebody, and a friend of mine, her name's Ashley, she coaches, and she's also very into human design, and that gets into
I had someone on a podcast like that.
Probably Ashley. Was that
yeah, Ashley Clark.
I'm
kidding. She was on the podcast.
That's what I thought.
And we were talking about human design.
The same person. But it came to me because I just had this thought. I was like, because there's all this talk about all these old principles and whatnot from a long time ago. Like ancient Kemet, all that. They're really starting to resurface. The stuff from like the Kabbalion, the Emerald Tablets, like all those things are much more in the public sphere right now. And all this talk about like energy and how do we function as a human being? Like, what does it mean to be human? Like, what are we missing? Like, what is this experience feel like? There's so much more behind the scenes, and like, I know we've all felt this way for like our whole life. Like, why are we looking at the sky? Like, why am I so intrigued by all these things I've been told? Well, that's just nonsense. That's witchcraft. That's woo woo. What I've come to find is all of the stuff that I've basically been told about anything in like the spiritual realm, like the witchy realm, like whatever. It's all really real. It's just we have such a misconstrued understanding of how it all works, and like what we've forgotten over time as human beings, as like who we and what we truly are, right? So this all ties into how I ended up with Goldco, but it was about 5 years ago. I started in on this series called Magical Egypt. And I remember being in my apartment, like wanting to just like throw stuff at the wall, because what they're talking about in this documentary, from all this research and stuff that they've done, and they have all this proof that the timelines of things and how they progress are actually, they're wrong. Like, Egypt is a lot older than we originally were told it was. Like, how does something start at its peak and then decline? Like, there's just so many things that don't make sense when you break down the typical Egyptologist like run through of like their history, right? And that just led me to more questions, because as you start to go through like what's actually hidden in all the like the artwork and the things on the temple, I mean, you're literally, if you know what you're looking at finite pieces of human anatomy that's hidden in all the architecture, that's hidden in all the artwork, that's hidden, like, I mean, everything. There is not a thing that is out of place, and it all has meaning. And like, I mean, we're talking about not just like, representation of like your spinal column. We're talking about the representation of like your third eye through like the eye of Horus, the eye of Ra. Like those are pieces.
7th chakra.
The
Gotcha.
chakras, exactly. But we're
Mhm.
talking about like the third eye representation of that. That's a series of brain anatomy that's all interconnected, that has a specific function for your pineal gland.
Right. All right. Let me stop you there for a minute. So you look at Egypt, right? And you look at something as genius as the pyramids, right? And they didn't have any caterpillars, they didn't have any automatic cranes or licensed construction people back then. What they did have was a trail load of slave labor to find ways to move all this stuff. But you look at the mathematical genius of the pyramids, you look at the artwork. We all, it's not something where we want to go back just because it's interesting and it's history, and maybe and in many respects we occasionally, on a month that starts with an R, we want to get history right. You're saying, and this is where I agree with you, and this is where I want you to take us. Why do we need to do this? What is the is there was you were getting into, there is a meaning to the genius of the mathematics. There is a meaning to why artwork was written this way. There's a meaning to their communication via, I don't know if it's Sanskrit or whatever, and this and that. I'm just a kid from Brooklyn, but I know enough to make conversation. Get take it from here. What's your assertion? Let's just start with Torin, what you're researching and what it means to you, and what you think the inherent meaning is of some of the stuff.
So this is where it gets really interesting for me, because what I realized as I started to go through this and like really start to, like peel back the layers of like, dude, what is all this stuff? Like, why is it so similar to what's coming out of South America? Why is it so similar to all these different like religions? And then, if you get a little bit of history, right, regardless of it's accurate or not, you can still see how everything in a sense starts to tie back into that landscape of Egypt historically, like all this knowledge, all these things that came out of it, right?
From a mathematical construction perspective, or from the spiritual third eye thing you were talking
All
about?
above. So what we lost over time is that we have separated spirituality and science, right? Like the spiritual realm and the scientific realm have been kept apart. What quantum physics is starting to do is it's starting to tie those two things back together. Like, because, the big thing of it now is like everything is energy, everything, quantum entanglement, everything is interconnected, right? That's the exact same thing that all of these ancient cultures were talking about way back when, the interconnectedness of all things. I mean, look at the word yoga in itself coming out of India. The word itself means unity, right? And then there's the 8 limbs that go into all the different ways that you can reach what one might call like enlightenment, self-realization. And it's all these different processes of basically like purifying the vessel through, the food that you eat, physical movement, what you're consuming, and not just from a dietary standpoint, but the information that you're consuming, like what you're putting into your mind, right?
Right.
So my takeaway from all of this is that this shit is fucking important. Like, that, why do we not learn about these things from a young age? Why are we not being taught about things like meditation? Why are we not being taught about these other bodily processes that exist to our benefit? Like, it just came out more recently, the whole bit with fasting, right? Like you go 3 days without food, your body basically starts to regenerate itself, right?
It also gets rid of non-essentials, right? Like there are certain things like in your body you want to get rid of, and I think what happens is when it doesn't have food or whatever nutrients it starts eating, what is it? I guess it goes to the very next thing, right? So
Right,
a lot of people that want to get rid of things that
but
they think don't belong in their body,
that's
fasting is
super important. But again, it's like, why did that take us so long when that's been in,
well because it's
Texas?
been rejected. Let me
Right.
interrupt you as bro science.
Mhm.
Just keeping people up to speed. Quantum physics. Just go through it, assuming that everyone doesn't know. Like, and some of them do. The field of quantum physics arose in the late 1800s and early 1900s from a series of experimental observations of atoms that didn't make intuitive sense in the context of classical physics. So, it's I'm not going to call it an alternative form of physics, but it is, but I don't like calling it an alternative form because it still falls into the category of physics, right?
Mhm.
Like I'm not an alternative coach because I choose to coach a certain way that other coaches don't. I'm a coach, right? But for the sake of the conversation, I wanted
No,
to
yeah,
bring it
absolutely.
there.
That's
Hmm.
really important.
Yeah.
So, you know, my big question is, I mean, I could really go on a mad one if I wanted to about the why, right? But here's my issue.
I actually, for this podcast, I already told people, I already warned people. Well, I do, first of all, my camera, I do what I want. Okay. And the genius of having all these episodes is there's some that you can skip and there's some that are interesting conversations.
Yeah.
People, this is an interesting one. This is,
So
I do not have people on this podcast that are not
think
interesting
about
people.
think about, right, the way that we live. Like we've been, especially here in the States, we've been taught our whole life to consume. We've been conditioned since we were little that we live in a consumeristic culture, that we need X, Y, and Z in order to make ourselves happy, in order for this to function, in order for that to function. Like everything has a linear pattern that it's supposed to follow, right?
Yep.
Well, if you start looking into what a lot of these old texts and everything are saying, and even quantum physics has come back and basically said time's not relevant. It's a construct of our reality based on the way that, the density that we exist in, right? We're such condensed bags of vibration, if you will, that in order for us to like get from point A to B, we physically have to move from one point to another because that's just how it is in our reality, right? So time doesn't behave linearly, it behaves in spirals. That's why there's all these cycles, the precession of the equinoxes and everything, right? Like everything spirals in a clockwise fashion in our universe, right? So if time doesn't behave linearly, but we're taught that it does behave linearly, right? What implication does that have on your life? And like these are questions that I started having of like, okay, so there's all this information that's been hidden from us. Why? Why why can't we know that? Like why is that bad? Right? Interesting, of like why do you want to hide old knowledge that and the way that it's been suppressed, right? Like it's not gone. It's still there. And like you can find it now more than ever. The problem is that it's like information overload, right? It's like you go down one rabbit hole, and the next thing you've opened up a whole sinkhole, and you don't really know which path to follow because
And
there's
you can't
just
hone
too
it.
much, right?
And you can't hone it.
Hmm.
Like we were talking about the Rogan podcast and like some of his guests. I remember having Alex Jones on, and Alex Jones is a friend of his, right? Who, whatever you may think about him, the way the man's brain works, it can be a 3-hour conversation gone 26 different ways. And the biggest, the most viewed podcast is having him and Eddie Bravo. Eddie Bravo is what you would call a rabbit hole guy, right? Or tinfoil hat. The two of them on the same podcast. Joe literally had to scream, guys, we need to go one at a time. Like even Joe, who's interested in being all over the place and like, the ayahuasca experience and especially the ancient, he has Graham Hancock all the time on the podcast. So it was just very interesting to see two guys who were fountains of knowledge and in some cases lack thereof, because sometimes there's so many conspiracies, you lean more towards believing them as opposed to not believing them, or just like you said, just flatline and then see where the information goes, right? Now, I'm getting somewhere with this, Kanye West style, forgive me. As a fundamental, I believe that everyone that believes everything is true is just as dangerous as the one who believes none of it's true, right? So as a human being, I do the best I can to stay down the middle, right? And my reputation, I'm pretty good with that. And even I will have a conversation where I wind up being all over the place because of all this knowledge that you want to share that I think is connected or I think is a good point, but all of a sudden we're in non sequitur hell, right? It has nothing to do with, what we're talking about. Even now as we speak, like right now, I'm this close to like driving us both off the cliff with a good point that's not connected to what you were saying. And I think that's the challenge. That's the genius in me bringing this full circle. The challenge is to bring it back home every day and hit the reset button. Next morning, bring everything back home and reset. And if it passes muster, you at the end of the day, just like 50 first dates, you're getting to know that girl, you're going to wind up with the person you love, like at the end of the day. And then in the morning, I don't know if you saw 50 first dates. She wakes up, doesn't have a memory who he is, and he has to whatever. So very much like 50 first dates. And I think it's a great comparison. If it passes muster and if it has any meaning to yourself, at the end of the day, on your reflection or end of the week or month or whatever time span, you'll be back to the same place. And that's how you know it means something.
I think it's perfect that you just use 50 first dates. For real. No, seriously. That goes so perfect into like kind of what I was getting at, right? Of like, why has all of this information been like swept under the rug? And we're told that it's like, it's the voodoo, like witchcraft, like whatever religious, whatever nonsensical dogma that's been associated with all this stuff that has nothing to do with any of it.
Yeah, I got a voodoo doll out there, but I'll tell you later. I got a voodoo doll that keeps stabbing me in the knee, and I'm able to play every sport except volleyball.
Okay, but think of this. Think of this. 50 first dates. This is a perfect example, right? He wakes up every single day, and she does not remember who she is. That's literally every single one of us, every single day that we wake up.
Isn't that wild?
Dude, it's insane.
Keep going, dude. You're on a roll here.
Because we don't know. We're not taught all of the information, right? Like it's kept separate from us, because a society that knows how to become energetically and spiritually sovereign and not create reality for other people, like we've been doing for a very long time. Won't get too much into that, because that gets into a lot of like in-depth hermetic principles, and the explanation of them can break your brain. But like people don't. Well, first of all, people don't want to accept that like you are responsible for your own reality, right? Like people can't handle that. Like the very first principle that comes out of the Kabbalion is the all is mind, right? Everything is mental. So I like what is it out of the like the Upanishads and like all the stories of like Brahma, Vishnu, Krishna, like Shiva, like all that. They can use the comparison, like the story, the little kid song, row, row, row your boat, right? Like gently down the stream, merrily, 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 life is but a dream. So circle back to what I was talking to you about Egypt and all the stuff that's in consciousness. It all centers around consciousness, right? Like that is the the superseding thing of all things in existence is everything has consciousness within it. This desk, laptop, me, you, these microphones, there's all a level of consciousness that exists within everything in creation. And again, this gets into some of the other principles, like, like nothing is ever at rest, everything vibrates. Everything has a cause and its effects and vice versa. The all is mind, as above, so, or the principle of correspondence, the principle of gender, like they're all universal laws, if you will, that underpin and underplay everything in creation, right? The first two are definitely the most important. And I circle back to that with the 51st states idea, is that the all is mind, right? Like we are, you could say, in the dream of God, in the mind of God, and we're each our own individualized piece of that God consciousness. So everything that exists has a piece of God within it, right? And I just use that word as a blanket term, right? Like God, creator, whatever. I like God because it works as a nice little acronym too. GOD, generation, operation, destruction.
It's someone no one believes, but we still pray to. So I mean,
Hey,
what do we even?
It's an
Right?
algorithm.
Yeah.
It's an algorithm.
Yeah, and I'm gonna get somewhere with that in a minute, but I wanted you to footnote that because
So
I think I have a beat on what the obstacle is that blocks all of this. But go ahead.
Yeah. So the all is mind, right? And the all is contained within everything in the all. The two different versions of the all. One's all capital letters, one's look. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So people aren't willing to accept that. Like that literally is just the basic principle that everything is interconnected energetically in the mind of God is the easiest way I could think to.
Of course, it's easy because nobody knows.
That,
nobody can read God's mind, but
But that's just it, though, is we actually can read God's mind, because what is meant for you, that's trying to find you from an energetic standpoint, as you clear all the blocks and do all the shadow work and this and that of shedding the layers of the onion that make up what isn't really truly you, right? Because the way that we're brought up, it wraps us up like a present, but the wrapping paper is not supposed to be there, right? It's like we're one of those ever had somebody give you a gift and it's just a bunch of boxes that are wrapped up, and then you open another and it's another box, and the actual gift's something really small, like a deck of cards or something like that, but it takes you a while to get to the gift. Well, think about all the conditioning and things that you go through as you develop as a child and become an adult and all of this, right? You pick up a lot of layers, you pick up a lot of things that are honestly they're totally irrelevant but relevant to your existence, right? That kid that pushed you in line when you were 8 years old and you fell down and cut your knee, and you've hated standing in lines ever since. And for whatever reason, you have no idea of this in the subconscious, right?
Yeah, and I mean that's at least an example.
But you go to a
that
grocery
you can relate
store,
to it, because there's some things that one thing has nothing to do with the other, and they're connected.
But you
At
go
least,
to a grocery store, and anytime you're in line, you get anxious. Why? Why do you have no fucking idea?
Because you ain't got no phone with games on it.
You have
play games on your phone, and then a line waits for you.
Exactly. But think about that, right? Think about that. The anxiety that you never deal with, that came from that trauma way back when you were 5 years old, you got pushed in line, is still playing out in your, I'm 32, my 32-year-old self, when I go to the grocery store, from something I'm not even consciously aware of that had that kind of impact on me. Right? But if you start to understand these principles that you can learn, like the all is mind, you are creating that. Whatever you think about, whatever energy is going on up in here in your brain is going to be reflected out into your external environment based on the second principle, right? Like the as above, so within, as
Right.
within, so without, right? If you can understand just the all is mind, and that if you can control what's happening up here,
Mhm.
like you'll be a free person.
Yeah.
Like the
Agreed.
nothing can stop you. Now the levels to that go incredibly deep.
Well, the levels are dictated by the obstacles. All right. Allow me. All right.
Absolutely.
Now, I don't mean to narrow things down to two things. I don't believe in false dichotomies, but I believe in two major choices, right? Like, I'm not like that. You know how like the USA, Russia, you're with us, you're against us, and that's not true. You could be neither, or you could be both, right? There are so many other layers, but I'd like to start here. There are two ways to answer a question as human beings. One way is through debate, where someone plants their feet here, someone plants their feet here, and then through some level of groundedness and honesty, and not taking it personal, just obey the 10 commandments of logic. No ad hominem attacks, no bandwagon fallacies, no false dichotomies, no straw man fallacies. Right? There's 1 to 10, and I'll put them up on the board as when you talk. The second way is to do something I call Call of Duty co-op mode, where you and I work together. We don't really have an agenda. We just have a question because we're inherently curious. And through that method, we can answer the question together. Right? Now, the one thing those two methods have in common, Torin, is that you have to, we feel, not you have to, but we feel we have to establish a set of given circumstances to move on to the next thing. Right? And if the given circumstances are not so given, then everywhere you take it from there is a fruit from a poisonous tree. You're building this building, right? But the foundation's not there, and the building, it might look solid, but it's going to fall like a house of cards because you started the conversation the wrong way. For example, the Khalil thing, right? Khalil being like arrested off the street and this and that. I had a debate with someone saying, well, he supports an extremist group. He supports Hamas. He did this. He did that. And they went off those set of given circumstances where my argument was he's not the leader of any group. He doesn't support any group. He was there to negotiate both groups. And if you delve into it, like Passover, he had Jews and Muslims in the same room in a candlelight vigil, right? And that's something that if the media or someone doesn't want you to believe, they're not going to report that. Google search that right now. You're not going to find it, right? Google search the first reported measles case in Texas. You're not going to find it because the first measles case happened in 2024. And if you're trying to paint a bad image of RFK, you want to attach him to all of those cases and deaths, because like one of the deaths happened when he just got confirmed, and there were 26 cases happened. He wasn't even in. So, I don't mean to steer it that way, and I apologize. I'm just trying to say that the obstacle is if they start this foundation from a set of given circumstances that are not so given, it's tough, right? You're talking about spiritual and God, right? And in order for me to have this conversation with you, and I'm willing because I'm a spiritual God person and not necessarily a religious or an organized religious person. So we were able to carry the conversation because we, as a foundation, as a given circumstance, acknowledge that there is a God, acknowledge that there is a spiritual entity, and we're just trying to understand how. So we're in co-op mode trying to answer this together. There's zero opposition, and which is wild to some people because they think you have to have opposition to get answers, and that's crap.
Well,
So, but that's the obstacle. And I need you to break in because I've already
no.
over presented.
No, I don't think you
I
overpresented
over
it.
presented my argument for what the obstacle would be.
No, honestly, Jason, this is like.
Hold on 1 second. We gotta take this picture. Where's this picture? Where is he? Look. Does that look like a girl that remembers anything that happened last night? 50 first dates, people. That's Adam Sandler. That's Drew Barrymore, and that's her. She loses her memory when she wakes up. So they can have a great day the day before, fall in love, wind up in the same bed, and she wakes up the next morning, looks at him, and screams uncontrollably because she can't remember. It's called 50 First Dates, people. Make it happen. Go ahead, Torin.
No, we did not get paid for that ad, unfortunately.
I just like I like
No,
every
but here's
even
the,
my worst Adam Sandler. A bad Adam Sandler movie is like bad pizza. It's never that bad.
yeah.
So
Here's the cool thing about the like spiritual like chat, right? Is there's no per se like right or wrong way to go about all of it. It's just like, yeah, there are principles and there are like scientific universal truths
right.
of once you start to really look into, you know, like how energy moves and how this does that and da 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 da, like yes, you can get into a very like broken down science
Yes.
of
Lucid body
spirituality.
movement is science and spiritual.
Exactly.
It's both.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm getting at is the truth's been hidden from us because we're not bodies that got given a spirit, right, to have this experience here on earth and then just like die and then get stuck in the same like incarnation cycle and end up back here again. It's like, dude, we are a multi-dimensional, like infinite soul that inhabits a body for X amount of time to have an experience. Then the body is relinquished, if you will, and returns to that from which it's hence it came. But the soul goes on. Like, you know, we continue to have that experience. It's like it's all about growth. And the cool and like again, the cool thing is like once you really start to like get to that point of understanding, it's like, dude, we're just two souls having an experience, right? Like we might be on the same wavelength for a lot of this experience, but my experience, while it's intertwined with yours, is completely separate, but still a part of.
But how do you get there? How do you get past? How do you? I guess the obstacle would be right and wrong, where the foundation is what is, right?
Well,
So there's a difference between what's right and what's wrong, or maybe there's a difference in what is, or maybe people just take what is and based on how they were raised and what they believe in and their inherent beliefs and their character armor that they built for and against that, right?
mhm.
Uh, um, might be the obstacle on us realizing what is, right? This also takes a lot of time, right? Most of the world, we especially in America, we got 2/3 of America that are their own nothing, be happy, and they're working a job and a half, they're working two jobs, they're making just enough money to be broke, right?
But
Who has
Jason,
time who in that demographic would have time to stop and reflect on this?
right? But let me ask you this: why is it like that? You know,
I think
like
there's a
out.
power dynamic that doesn't want us to be independent thinkers. If you're asking me for just a real answer,
Yeah, yeah.
and we can
100%
go
real
all
answer.
day. I can give you the long answer because you and I
Mhm.
don't exactly do short form podcasts, right? But no, the short answer is there's a power dynamic that knows that knowledge is power, right? There's a power dynamic that doesn't want everybody out there thinking for themselves, because if they think for themselves, they'll realize who the center of the obstacles of their oppression or of their quality of life, never mind their sanctity of life, who it is, right? And we both knew what I'm talking about. There's a demographic of people, the generationally wealthy people that are the song "Don't Worry, Be Happy."
Mhm.
They can remake "Own Nothing, Be Happy," and everybody will sing along with a guitar.
So you know what's wild though
So that's
is
my general answer, and
yeah.
and I don't mean to be general, but you
No,
asked the question.
that is a general answer for that. Of my general answer for that one is yes, we've been conditioned. Yes, we've been brought up a certain way of existence, and yes, we all ask questions, but we don't all truly want answers to those questions that we ask, right? Like it's easier to
It's true.
stay in what's familiar and safe, even if it's painful,
Yeah.
right? Because again, think of it this way, right?
And for everybody listening, he doesn't mean everybody. Like we're not, this
Yeah.
isn't a monolithic answer, but he's talking about a huge demographic of people.
Well, we've all
They
been
ask the
through
question,
this.
but they don't really want.
Yeah.
They don't want that sauce.
We've all done this. We've
Right.
all been guilty of this in some way, shape, or form. And the way I look at life is like there's nothing that's separate from me, that's separate from anything, right? Like it's all, tied into the one,
Mhm.
right? So as I'm walking around every day, I'm looking at a bunch of mirrors, right? Like you're a mirror of me in some way, right? Because each piece of this individuated consciousness contains the information of the entire whole, right? So whether or not I like you or if I, vibe with whatever you're putting out has everything to do with that piece of me, whether it's a piece of me that I have a positive affinity with or a negative affinity with, right? So you might trigger something in a piece of me that I don't like about myself, something that makes me feel unworthy, smaller, lesser than, and that in some way, shape, or form, right? Like something about that experience that you've had in your life reflects some experience that I've had back in my life. And it can either be a great thing because you see that and you see that pattern within yourself. And again, it all just gets down into patterns. Because, like I said, time isn't linear, it behaves in spirals, right? So, what happens when you get stuck in like a behavioral pattern, right?
Mhm.
Like you're basically stuck in a piece of time that keeps cycling itself back around because it,
Yeah.
it wants to be like fixed, right? Like it wants you to take that energy and like get it out of your
And I
system,
never thought about it that way.
right?
Because when you were talking about circular action, I
Mhm.
thought you were talking about absurdism.
No,
Like every act, you're right back where you started from, except it's a slightly worsening condition. But you're talking
in a
about
sense, yes.
start over until you fix it.
Right. But so think about it this way. What you're saying is like the universe talks, right? Like it doesn't not give you like clues, signs, hints of like where you need to go. Some people will be like angel numbers, some people it's animals, whatever way that it can communicate to you, but it's always going to be in like symbolism, right? Like it's not gonna always, give you a prophetic vision that's like go to Main Street at midnight. It's gonna be repeating patterns, right? And it's like patterns are something that we repeat constantly as like behavioral, right? Like even something as simple as your morning routine of like, I get up, I do 20 push-ups, I brush my teeth, like I get dressed. That's a behavioral pattern. The issue that we run into is we are much more electrical beings than like the Newtonian style of physics will like allow us to admit, right? Like we behave very electrically. We're like what's like 90% water. We talk like our neurons, this and that. Like that's how our energy carries itself through us, right? Is in a electromagnetic way, right?
Hmm.
So what happens when you have an experience and you attach yourself to the outcome? Like grandma died when I was 8 years old, right? You get stuck on that emotion. It's like getting stuck in a time loop, in a behavioral pattern
Yeah,
that you might be totally unaware of, but now there's this piece of your energy that's basically not moving properly, right?
it's
Like
it's a girl interrupted thing or a boy interrupted thing.
right.
If you ever seen the movie Girl Interrupted,
Mhm.
or I can give you an example of Silence out of Lambs in a minute. But go ahead.
Yeah. So this is happening constantly, whether you're aware of it or not, right? This is why you'll start to feel energetically bogged down after whatever kind of day at work. It's like, oh, this person's bitching at me, this person's complaining. And all of a sudden you're getting attached to all of these energetic cycles that have nothing to do with the like truest form of your energy. It's
Right.
all noise and nonsense that's designed to make you feel some type of way
Mm,
to suppress your energy,
right.
right? So,
I think it's also bizarre that the majority of this that happens in your lifespan happens in your early ages,
oh,
right?
well,
Because half of the reason you have circular action is because you're building a character armor to protect yourself from somewhat you think might hurt you. in some way, emotionally, physically, or
And
and,
see,
and
that's
whatnot.
the root cause of literally
Everything.
everything is fear. Fear is the number one thing that, like, if you trace something back to its deepest roots in terms of like where an emotion, like where an emotional block came from, like where an energetic block came from, I would be willing to bet all the money that I will ever make in my lifetime that fear is going to be the root component of that emotion.
Going to be,
It
historically has been, is, and
always will be.
I guess, right? There's no way to change that.
But think about it.
There's nothing on the horizon that says that's going to change.
But what's the biggest fear that people have? Is death, right? Death is a huge proponent
Or
of
fear itself.
fear
Yeah.
itself, right? But we'll use death as a big one. Right? People don't want to die; they want
It's
to
a
know.
deep issue. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a deep issue. But what did I just say earlier? It's like you're a spirit that's eternal that inhabits a body for a given amount of time to come and, like, fuck around and find out why you're here, and then you die and you return to all that is. Maybe you learn the lessons that you're supposed to learn, maybe you didn't, you come back or you go somewhere else, but you're literally, it's like this endless energetic video game, if you will, that, like, you're in control of your avatar's experience at all times. While there may be less preferred experiences occurring around you, and your ability to adapt and control, your emotional and, reactions to things. Not that you're not supposed to feel stuff, but you become that emotional alchemist, as people may have heard that term of, like,
Right.
you're responsible for what's going on in the mind,
Mhm.
right? And that's going to help you project the reality that you want. And what I'm getting at
But
with all this stuff
please,
is,
yeah, because I have a
like,
broader point, but you're rolling right now.
yeah, it's like what I'm getting at with all this stuff is, like, you have the capacity to create that which you desire in your own life, regardless of what you've been told your whole life, regardless of, if you feel this dream's too big, too small, like, I don't know. If you're telling yourself that, that's what you're projecting. If you're like, oh, like, I can't live my dream because I'll never be wealthy enough. Okay, like, the universe doesn't discriminate, right? Like, that's what you put
Well,
out there.
that's what
That's
I
what you're
meant
gonna
by
get,
own
right?
nothing, be happy. When you come to the conclusion of contentment, um, on these things, then you're not worried anymore. Like if you know you're never going to be rich, then you don't have to worry about being rich, right? We went through this cycle, and this is why the circular action is necessary, because circular action, um, how can I say, launch pads, something I call retrospective action. And I wanted you to finish your point because I wanted to talk about retrospective action, because I couldn't talk about retrospective action without you introducing circular action.
Well, it's funny because
Yeah. All right.
my
So
form of retrospective action.
yeah, but
Please.
I look, there's so many volleyball examples we can use, but we're not, love you volleyball. We're not giving you that today. So I'll go, Silence of the Lambs. Silence of the Lambs, for anyone, it's a must-see for everybody. Anthony Hopkins, Oscar-worthy supporting actor performance. I think he, in fact, did win an Oscar. Jodie Foster,
I
right?
still eat fava beans.
So Jodie Foster, right? That's hilarious. So Jodie Foster is Agent Starling, kind of a rookie FBI person. She was assigned to do a questionnaire for a doctor who's in maximum security. He's called Hannibal the Cannibal, and he's a treating psychiatrist. His name is Hannibal Lecter, right? So he eats people. So he's muzzled, right? He's in a cage, and you can't come near the cage. You can't, whatever. And everyone warned her, boss, whatever you do not answer any of his questions. Just ask him about the questionnaire, and if he doesn't, then walk away. But you do not want this man in your head. And when you're trying to make a name for yourself, and you think you know behavioral science, of course you're going to engage with this man, and she did, and he was neck deep in her head. And Everyone thinks he had criminal intent, but what he did during the movie was end up treating her for her circular action. So bear with me on this, guys. So when she was a kid, she lived with her uncle that would slaughter lambs. And the screams of the lamb at night affected her in a way because I think as a child, she's spiritually connected to all living things, animals more than plants, because you identify because the animals scream and do all those other things, right? So one night, she just let them all out. Just the hell with this, no more slaughtering a lamb. So the uncle eventually caught the lambs again and sent her away. But he ended up slaying all the lambs that night, and she could not shake the feeling off of the lamb screaming at night. So where one thing has nothing to do with the other, it affected her psychological growth, and that's where he was treating her. And you guys have indulged long enough, so I'll skip to the through line. Hannibal basically said, "So, Clarice, you feel like, do you feel like if you catch Buffalo Bill, that these lambs will stop screaming?" And she goes, "I don't know." And he goes, "Thank you, Clarice." And the through line, and what I mean by retrospective action is, in order for you to fix your present and get on with the future, you might have to look in past things where it seems like one thing has nothing to do with the other, but somehow are connected. If you're 14, you're molested by your piano teacher, then all of a sudden you start failing science class, and you used to be an A student. Now your parents are delighted if you even pass. It seems like one thing has nothing to do with the other, but in many ways, it might have everything to do with the other, because you, as in that age, in your psychological growth, you're building a character armor to protect yourself for this, but it might be protecting yourself from doing other things that don't hurt you.
Oh, 100%.
That Watching that movie cured me. I have a past with my piano teacher. That little boy was me. That I wasn't able to move on, and even with the military and the discipline, showing up on time, doing your whatever, I wasn't able to confront that until my college professor, Gordon Farrell, theater history professor, made me watch the movie. And we sang. I went back to school when I was 33, so I wouldn't party with the kids. I partied with the professors, and he really, really helped me understand retrospective action. And through retrospective action, and suddenly, out of the blue, everything reversed in my entire life. I went from this guy who was 265 pounds, living check to check, about to get fired from that check to check job. Didn't have a license, New Yorkers don't, didn't have this. Suddenly, I'm like 200 pounds even. I'm playing volleyball again. I returned back to school, graduated with like a 3.71 or something. I can't remember. And just created this. So I'm speaking from personal experience, but I wanted to use for the audience listening, because I talk about myself all the time. Silence of the Lambs is a great movie to see, and everyone listening can identify, because as you and I just said, most of this happens that shapes how you're going to own nothing, be happy, be rich, be poor, be happy, be sad, cheat, be loyal. It happens before you even turn 18 years old. Your
Well,
psychological growth from a toddler to a child, from a child to a teenager, from a teenager to a young adult, from a young adult to a psychologically full-fledged adult, if that's a real thing. And that was the point I was trying to make. But in order to get to retrospective action, the circular thing keeps happening until you fix it. And that was the genius of your the circular action you were talking about. It is a human design, because every human being has a fault, but they also have something that we don't like to do. It's called self-correction. There's a self-correct in all of us that we run away from. We choose not to because we think we're right in this. But the circular action says, no, you're back, fix this. Nope, you're back, fix this. Nope, still didn't, fix this.
And that's the hardest thing for people to pick up on.
That's the obstacle.
Pattern recognition of like, what are these behavioral patterns that I'm presenting on a daily basis, weekly basis? Like, And dude,
Mm.
when you really start to get into it, and this is why like I love astrology. I
God
knew I was gonna say it.
damn
at
it,
some point.
Torin. We were getting somewhere until you said the A word.
A word. No, but
Torin Jeffreys.
dude, what happened up there, right? Like take the second principle, right, of correspondence, like as above, so below, as within, so without.
I'm giving you the camera for this one. Go ahead, man.
They call the incarnation of your soul like the soul's journey, and like all the different planets and whatnot are like energetic portals that the soul passes through before it comes into contact with the physical body.
Right.
So each one of these portals represents a different like bandwidth of energetic frequency, and depending on their positioning, because the universe, things behave geometrically, right, in terms of like how things work, they all have their own like geometric pattern that imprints itself at that moment the soul passes through it. So that's why you have all these different archetypes for like Aries, Capricorn, Sagittarius, like all those. That's why they have these imbued.
Look, it's why they
qualities
still
with them.
have horoscopes.
That's what I'm saying.
It's why I'm trying to avoid this, but there's a reason we have horoscopes, and there's a reason why people still read them
Yeah.
every
Now,
day.
it's a lot more in depth than just like, picking up the Sunday paper and looking at your daily horoscope, because you have to understand that they are archetypes and that we do live in a universe of free will, and that we get to choose how these energies interact with one another.
But how do you get there? You know what I'm saying? Like right now, someone listening to this podcast might think you're floating in outer space because you're establishing a set of given circumstances that to them might not be given, right? You just said right now a few seconds ago that we are geometric, and talking about the spirit, the geometry allows the spirit to flow through. They have no idea what you're talking about because it's a foundation that they don't understand. And this is why there's no way this podcast can be a short a short form podcast.
Yeah.
And for the people that are sticking with us, I have Torin on because there's a genius. I don't like to use the word genius, but in the classic sense of the word, there is a genius of understanding it and applying the application of it.
So in order to get there, it's a one of like a know thyself kind of situation, right?
Right.
And I'll use myself as the example. I think we talked about last time I was on kind of like how I was stepping away from volleyball, for
But
whatever.
we were kind of all over the place on that one.
But
Like I liked it, but I didn't like it. Today we're
I
like getting somewhere.
I want to use that as an example.
Please go
though,
ahead.
because I had this like moment recently that I was in a yoga class, and a little bit about my story of like, I had all the surgeries with my foot when I was a kid, couldn't really run until I was about like 11, 12 years old.
You have quite a story.
So I don't know why he did this. He picked up on something energetically, but we were doing a little moment in my Kundalini class of like ecstatic dance, just, like just drop all the layers, just whatever wants to come out, comes out. And all of a sudden, my buddy Dustin,
those are always fun. Those are scary as heck and fun.
Dude, he's like,
it's intimidating.
Yeah, but when you actually allow yourself to just go with it,
yeah,
and like, dude, it's so much fun.
Yeah, and you don't allow yourself because you think there's everybody watching you, and if you're in this venue that allows you to do that, it is the most freeing feeling in the world, and everyone feels it.
Yeah.
I had to do this as an actor.
Yeah,
I had to do this for 3 years.
So
movement for actors is
Yeah.
everything you're talking about.
So out of the blue, he's just like, just start running. Just like start running in place, with your eyes closed, like when you were a little kid. And it was like literally somebody shot an arrow through my heart, because I was literally just like, holy shit. Like I couldn't run for the longest time for, like 3-4 years or whatever when I was a little kid, because of all those surgeries and whatnot and all that I went through. and I just start sobbing, like, as I'm just, like, running in place. But it's, like, it was such a freeing feeling of, like, "Oh, like, I didn't realize I was still holding on to that," like, emotional baggage from all that I went through. But then it led me to, like, a deeper layer of it, of, where did this affinity for, like, sports and competition really come from? And what I found out about myself was that it all stemmed from that old wound, right? Of like, I was told I'd probably never be able to play sports. And that's all I wanted to do was like, fit in and like play with my friends when I was a kid. Led me to being obsessed with, proving my worth. My worth was literally tied into my production as an athlete. That's what I associated the two things with, was if I wasn't like busting my balls, performing at a high level, and basically like grinding myself into the ground, because that's like how willing I was and like what I would do in order to like just be able to go and play freaking little league baseball. Like my worth got associated with that over time, and like that's the work ethic that I learned through that. And I did that for years. Like from the time I was like 11, 12 years old, I started in on that path of like grind hard for what you want. Like you have to earn everything because, you've had this challenge. And, it got me to that point where like, okay, there's nothing that I don't think I could overcome. But at the same time, I put a lot of limitations on myself based on false beliefs of what had happened based on that experience. Right. Like,
That's the character armor.
mhm,
Your body did what it felt it had to do to protect itself at an early age where it didn't fully understand.
yeah. But being able to like be okay with that, like forgiving myself for basically torturing myself for the last 20 years of
Decade
my
and at
life.
least a decade and a half to my memory. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I really want to like stress that of like we don't realize that just through our thoughts, actions, and just like the things that we do every single day, even some of the ways that we choose to speak about ourselves, even like self-deprecating humor, like that's still speaking a level of truth into existence, right? And like I got called out for that one the other day, and you know what? It made me feel very guilty. But
Sure.
the reasoning though, I didn't like it is because this person was correct.
But that takes a skill too, though, right?
No, 100%. But what,
If you
what
can do it in the way where everyone can laugh together,
but even
that's
even still so,
different. Yeah.
even still so of who was it? Was it Bruce Lee who said never speak negative on your life because you're either casting white magic or dark magic, right? Like even just taking that joke about,
Right.
oh, like how dumb you are because you left your keys on the counter, right? That's still speaking negatively onto your life. Like you're and
Is it?
it is. It literally is, dude. Like this is the again circling back to, like universal principles and things of like that understanding of like the all is mind. Like just that simple statement alone has so much more power than you could ever imagine about what you're creating for yourself, right? It gets back into that, like what are you consuming? And what are you consuming from yourself? Like what thoughts are playing in your mind that are telling you, like for me it was your worth is all athletic. Like if you're not producing, or through production was the other one, was the other thing that came through it, like work and whatnot, is like if I'm not a high producer in what I'm good at, then I have no value, is what I was telling, is basically the way I was walking around, right? When
And beach volleyball is not.
yeah, that's
Man, that is
it.
that is at every level, right? Like,
But being able to let
yeah.
go of that and just being like, "Oh, no, like, I still have the play. I don't have the, like, that inherent drive to, like, be a professional anymore because I realize my true calling, my true passions lie elsewhere, but that was a necessary experience that I needed to go through in order to learn that about myself."
Well, it also makes your mind stronger than a lot of people who are pursuing and are still pursuing beach volleyball, right? I had Savvy Simo on the podcast a few years ago, and I'm not going to pretend to be a shrink, but I did tell her in a podcast, because I guess my degree in theater performance makes my ego identity think I can do and say anything I want. But sometimes you know it when you see it, right? We're not doctors, but you see the symptoms, you recognize it, and you're not trying to label people. But I told her to her face, the job can't save you.
Nope.
And it is something didn't get then, maybe still doesn't get now, because when you've been doing this since you were 6, and this is all you know, and very much of the tenets and what you believe takes, and the dedication and all that stuff, it becomes your identity more as a collective whole. And what happens is the more that it shapes, the higher percentage it shapes your identity, the more hyper sensitive you are to everything that happens to it in a good way or a bad way. Like, I disagree with Bruce Lee's assertion of negativity, because without that, there'd be no satire, and satire is important in our life too. But it's very, very difficult for someone like her at that time. I don't know who she is now. I know she's still, well, now she's still this sweet person. She's still this great human being. She's still this person that treats everybody the same. I tend to want to hang out with elite athletes who men equals man. Like, they don't, like, in a world, in a state in California where everyone cares about what you drive and what house you live in, and and are those real Oakleys, or those Folkleys, right? Like, to have someone that, and just like, who gives a crap, be a good person. I'll always be more of a friend to her than she ain't walking around thinking about me, but I will always value that in her. But with that being said, she has allowed this thing that's pretty much what she knows to identify her as a collective whole. And when she's done playing, what are you going to do? The job can't save you behind. The job, the job can't save you. Yeah, I'm trying not to say curses because we're doing really good. The job can't save your butt. It cannot save you behind, because I'll give you another example. My kid sister, 2 tours in Afghanistan, a true American badass, right? Came out. She's a lesbian, right? And in the beginning stages of coming out of being gay, she got sucked into this whole thing where she thought it was her as a heightened percentage identity. And I had to have a talk with her and say, hey, look, you are also gay. You are not gay. You are you are Mary Beth, that is a vet, that is a social worker, PhD, that is a military contractor, and you're gay. You cannot let this new discovery consume you as a collective whole. And if you do, that's fine too, but you have to be mature enough to know that this is a great feeling and you're loving it, but it's very, very temporary. And when it's over, not if, because it's at some point that cycle is going to be over and there's going to be a new one. What else is there? And I can't believe I jumped from volleyball to this and that. But the foundation of what I'm talking about is you, Torin Jeffreys, you have this spiritual realization because you haven't allowed, except volleyball, this one thing to take this heightened percentage of your life where you identify as that as a collective whole.
And my point to it is identity is a hell of a confusing thing to really go through, right? Because
it's scary.
It's terrifying.
Like, some of these people, if they're not playing, what are they going to do? They have no idea what they're going to do if they don't play. This is all they know.
But how many people is that the story for out of whatever it is that they do, whether that's like an office job that they've worked at for 20 something years, whether it's, they played beach volleyball since they were 5 years old.
It's all I do, but it's not all I know,
Right.
But what's my day job, Torin? This is
just hanging out.
This
That's great.
Podcasting, coaching privately, coaching club, coaching pros. right? I'm a true, if and anyone could call themselves a true, I'm a commentator, I travel around. If anyone could call themselves a true Spartan of this sport, like what do you do? What do you do for a living? I'm a blacksmith. What do you do? Right, I'm a carpenter.
But
Spartans, what do we do for a living? How? Who's
but
the Spartan here?
see what you've done though, and
Yeah.
I love that how beautiful this is, because there's never been, since I've met you, a question as if you were to doubt who you are. Like, yeah, you're a sensitive guy. People's opinions and whatnot to you matter. You're human.
Yeah.
That's just part of who you are, you know? But you know that about yourself. And you take that with a grain of salt, because you're just like, yeah, like I know I can be a little too emotional, but you
Yoga
know
will do
what?
that.
Like, people
Yoga
bother
will do
me.
that, dude. Yoga will do that.
Yeah.
Yoga will cure you. You're for me, theater cured me.
Hey, but
Yeah.
you have taken all of the things that you love, right? Theater, volleyball, you know, athletics, your voice, and the things that you have talent in, and you figured out a way to share that with the world on your terms, right? Like nobody's telling you how to do it. People have opinions of how this podcast can go. Absolutely. Opinions are dangerous. Everybody's got one, right? Like,
Yeah.
who cares? No one's going to tell you,
This is
you know,
episode 235.
yeah. And how many more to come, right? Like, but my point is,
got to get you, Rob, and Greg on for 300. Do like
yeah.
a little watch party or something. I don't know.
But my point is that, you know, you could have very easily taken some of the experiences that I've seen you go through since you've been in California, in terms of some of the commentating things, in terms of stuff, how people have treated you out here, and tucked your tail between your legs and been, you know what, screw this, I don't want to do it, it's too hard, I'm not going to.
Yeah, that's a real thing too.
Yeah, I've seen
don't
you.
Don't think I didn't contemplate that. Yeah.
No, I've had conversations with you about it.
Yeah, I'm
you
like,
know?
nope.
But
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
normal. You
Well,
didn't go through anything that nobody else would have experienced in a similar or paralleled situation.
well,
All that,
that's a privilege I enjoy, right?
but
I can always say they need me more than I need them.
right. But
Always.
here's the kicker: is regardless of where we're at in life, if you're locked up for the next 30 years, if you know you're contemplating leaving, you know, your baby daddy, wherever, you always have a choice. That
Yeah.
in that instance, you can decide to make your life better for you.
Well, your choices are dictated by what happened to you in your childhood to adulthood and the character armor you developed around it. For example, if you're a kleptomaniac, it doesn't mean you have no choice but to steal. It just makes your choice to steal or not more difficult than the average bear, right? Like if you're a nympho, right? You don't just how you feel about it is involuntary, but it doesn't dictate the choice of being eliminated, right? And this is why I'm always going to have arguments about nature versus nurture, right? Like if I'm in a restaurant, I see someone's veal parmesan or whatever, or eggplant parmesan, I'm going to look at it and be like, nice. But the choice to jump on the table and eat it, just just do barrel rolls over their plate and take my hand and just like my kid does with spaghetti. I like that, right? That's, believe it or not, as involuntary as that look, that was still a choice. It was just more difficult than somebody else who knows how to function like a mammal. So, confession time. On a subconscious level, I built character armor around this. On a subconscious level, want everyone to like me. The whole thought that someone doesn't like me, if I don't have the armor, it breaks my heart. And if I allow myself, someone I never met, some comment, some troll, hurts my feelings.
I've seen it
every single time. So there's a character armor that protects that. And the reason why, then the difference between me and other people is I'm openly admitting that. Because on a subconscious level, everyone that says they don't care what anyone thinks on this 100% level is not being self-honest. You do care what people think. There's just a percentage that is built by your character armor. And my character armor is a brick wall. So I still had this New York thing where everybody's like Jeff Samuels, like, dude, like this whole You know how he talks, right? Dude, this whole "I don't give a crap" attitude you have, like, or whatever, man, that's golden out here. He said, "You're gonna get far. That's golden out here because that's not how everybody, believes that or accepts that or pontificates that, right?" So, so we're just look. I know you're going the spiritual route and this and that, but this I had to bring it to this neutral ground of just real talk and just us just being honest with each other. Guys, you do want everybody to like you. Just stop it. You do, right? But there are percentages of that. There is a character armor that you have to build to protect yourself from being hurt, heartbroken. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. So, yeah. But Torin, I'm in a good place, and I think what I'm trying to say is
Well,
I don't. I'm trying not to make it sound like the whole thing is easy. None of this is easy. I just a few months ago I had a crash.
Well,
You
what I
know?
was gonna say, especially I like that you brought up the point that we're protecting ourselves from hurt, right? But I mean, if you think about what you're doing on a consistent basis,
Mhm.
like regardless of you're gonna get some comment on a podcast that's gonna send you into
I read them all, but
whatever.
I don't feed them all.
Right.
You don't feed the animals at the zoo.
But are you really afraid of that hurt then? I mean, think
No.
about it. Like that's pretty fearless to me of like knowing that something.
The answer is no.
But
But the question is it because my character armor said so?
no, the question is you don't give a crap anymore. You're okay with
Yeah.
sitting with someone's going to say something not nice about Jason and it's going to hurt his feelings for a minute, but in the long run that doesn't actually get to Jason just because it's just like, ooh, like that one cut kind of deep. Like why did that one hurt my feelings?
Well, the challenge is not to get caught up in this validation game.
And that's just it.
I've been on this planet for 50 years.
Yeah, you don't need anybody's
There
validation.
is no one on the tour right now, and I say this with egotistical, chauvinistic conceit. There is no one on the tour that has done more in their life than I have. Period. I'll say it. There's no one on the tour that has done more in their life than I have. You have not done military service. You have not done prison ministries. You have not been on a train 2 o'clock in the morning feeding people McDonald's because you used to close there and they throw away the food and you see someone sleeping and leave a bag. I'm not saying that I'm better, but I'm certainly not saying that I'm worse. I'm just saying that you've been on this planet long enough. It almost offends you that people will think that because they do this one thing that they do everything better. And you know what happens? You really want to let them know. And then you kind of become what you despise when you do it. Right? So even if you win the argument, as far as being true to yourself, you win or lose, you lose. And do you see the plight? Do you see the crash?
Yeah.
The crash, and then me having to just say, hey, look. And I want to finish with me because we're on things bigger than me. But when you look at what I have, the brand, and you look at what I have, the bottom line, there's no one that can touch my bottom line. My kid is still going to be my kid. Anyone messes with that kid, I will grab a bat and take it to their knees of the other parents and possibly their children, right? I have the coolest wife I don't even know how I landed. Torin, between you and me, you're like, we're going to turn off the camera. Just, Jay, how did you do it? No, seriously, how did you do it? Right? The best career, the best colleges, the best upbringing, the best body, the best smile, the best face. And for some reason, likes me. So it's like bad pizza, dude. It's not that bad. And I'm in LA saying that, okay? So enough about me, but I only brought that up because some people are like, oh, there goes, he's talking about himself again. But there's someone out there that's like, you know what? I'm close to Jason's age. I'm going through a similar journey, and maybe this can help me, and they can take it or leave it. And this is why. Yeah, why do I talk about me? I've been on this earth 55 years. All right.
I think you've earned. You don't
to
even have to.
46
You don't
different
even have
countries.
to earn that right. You just
No.
inherently by being here have a right to talk about yourself.
Oh, but these one-dimensional monolithic people talk about themselves all the time.
You're not one-dimensional
You know,
monolithic, so,
yeah.
do
So
your thing.
that's what I'm saying. Well, if they can, then I can. But I really, we can't leave here until we find a way to establish a way that we can set up given circumstances for people to get where you are on a spiritual level.
Well, here's
You
my.
talked about geometry. You talked about the historical contents and the chronology that goes with it. I'm not asking you to nutshell it. That's lazy, but I want to give us permission to think out loud, because we're neck deep in thinking out loud anyway.
No, hey,
That allows people to have something, not that they can grab like this cup, right? Because again, you cannot believe in God but still fear Him, right? You cannot believe in God, but you're in an earthquake. All of a sudden, you find yourself praying to something you don't believe in. So you do believe in something that you don't see, right? Isn't it wild? Even Bill Maher, who's an atheist, believes that it's Jewish people here have a spiritual biblical right to go back to Israel. Get that, the atheist, right? So take me on something that you think maybe a large demographic of people can grasp that allows them to move to where you are. And take your time, because that's a loaded question.
Well, that's the beauty of it, though. Is there's 10,000 different explanations for this for 10,000 different people.
I got another file I could put in. These things hold 2 hours and 26 minutes apiece. We can go 5 hours, dude.
Well, first of all, my goal with this isn't necessarily to get people to like where I'm at, right? Like my journey is my
course
own,
not.
right?
No,
Like,
that's my goal. That's why we're here.
right. Well,
No, your
right,
self-preservation.
No, hear me out. Hear me
Please,
out.
yeah.
So I know that teaching these things, and I think as the knowledge continues to develop with these like principles and insights and all of this, like there's a lot. And it's complicated, but for whatever reason, I've been blessed with the gift of understanding. And like I hear something, I'm like, oh yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And people then will look at me and be like, what? And I'll be like, well, blah, 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 blah. And like I just like word vomit a bunch of things.
Took a while to get there.
Yeah. But like the big thing for me is when I started to question everything that was around me. Like, what is this? Like a desk? Like who decided this was a desk? Like these are hands, okay, but why? Like what else do they do? Like how do they get here? Like this is just how I've always kind of gone around life. Is like my favorite question when I was like really, really little was, why, how, what's that? Like believe me, I was probably the most annoying child because I had to know.
There's a lot of but why.
But why exactly? Like, yeah, but why? Okay, but why?
Mm-hmm.
And I've always wanted answers, right? Like I've always asked questions, and I've always wanted to know things. I want to know how stuff works, and I wanted to see how it fit together, and then like put my hands on it and feel it. And so I've always just been inherently curious. And even with like, some of the more spiritual things, I've never been religious, but I've always had that draw to like the unseen, to spirituality. Ever since I've been like little, it's always kind of been like a pool. And then I realized that science and them are one and the same. I was like, oh wow, this is pretty sweet. But like the number one thing right now that I feel people going through, and that conversations that I have with a lot of people, is how much they hate their job. Right.
There's a place we can start that we can all relate to. Go ahead.
So when you detest where you work, right? Like, but you still continue to go into that place every single day. Doesn't make not even logical sense, right? Let alone from like a spiritual standpoint. It's like, okay, so you hate this, but you do it every single day, and the justification is, well, I got to do this because I've got to, like make money and feed my family. Not saying that those aren't real concerns, right? But who told you that? Why? Why do you need to do that? Like start questioning the things in your life that don't like align with what feels right for you, that like don't add up to you. Like, oh, like why do I hate this job so much? That's a big one. And not everyone's going to have the experience like me where you finally took that leap of faith, where I've been getting that, like, dude, quit your job. Hey, quit your job. Hey, like you really need to
Takes
quit your job.
testicular fortitude, my man.
Right. But again, that the unknown of like not knowing what's going to happen when you do something, right? That is paired in with our linear perception of time, right? So that X happens along with Y, and we should get Z, right? But that's not how it works, because you break that linear cycle that you're stuck in a loop on. That's a weird thing to say, but that's how it works. That's how it is, right?
But more circular, not than
No,
linear,
you're
right?
trying to take a cycle that you believe behaves linearly,
Right.
but you're actually stuck in a loop of that because the cycle itself is like it doesn't behave linearly. Like you're trying to control the outcomes of what's going to happen based on linear assumptions that aren't actually, that like you can't know that that's going to actually happen. So trying to take linear assumptions and apply them to your life causes problems, because like we're talking about, time behaves in spirals, right? So you can get stuck in that loop of trying to do things in a linear fashion, right? So that goes into everything of trying to control outcomes, right? Because when we don't know, right, the body lives in the past through like trauma, injury, all those kinds of things. The mind lives in the future based on the stories or the character armor that we've built up for ourselves, right? Like I got pushed in line when I was 5 years old. Oh no, like somebody just bumped into me at the grocery store and I'm in line, and all of a sudden I'm pissed off, ready to fight for literally like they just bumped me with their cart, but that trauma flared up from the past, right? But I go in line and I'm already anxious because my mind's predicting some future outcome based on some past event that it doesn't know is actually going to happen. It's just there. So my thing that I'm slowly getting to is just becoming more aware of your own patterns, becoming more aware of like what you're doing, like are you paying attention to how you're breathing? That's a huge one. Most people don't know that you're supposed to belly breathe, right? Like we hold, everyone's like walking around like holding their breath half the time. Like
Try to
your nervous system never gets to calm down. Like you're always in a fight or flight response, and like cortisol, this, that. I guess it would be like a combination of become more aware of yourself, your thoughts, your actions, the things that you're consuming. What, if you were to make a list of 20 things right now that you don't feel like you need in your life, like just off the top of your head, and you'd be surprised how easy that is when you really start to break it. You're like, oh, I guess I don't need to do that, and I don't need to do this first thing in the morning. And I'm like, oh, okay. There's just a lot of programmed nonsense that kind of just comes with existence, right? Like coffee, huge one for me. I love coffee. I don't need coffee. I don't need coffee to wake up. I don't need coffee to function energetically. I just really like coffee.
There it is.
And like I'm okay with that. But there are times where I'm like I need to not drink another cup of coffee because it's like number 10 today, right?
Can't do that. Because, and I think what you're getting at, and I like to translate it to Brooklynese, if you're in this circular pattern, it helps you understand and set given circumstances that allow you to move on. Because every time you come full circle, at some point, after it happens over and over and over again, you start asking yourself, how did I get here?
Women
Where
that
did it
you
start
date,
and how did I get here?
women you date is like
Oh, that's
this
for
is
you.
the
That's my personal favorite.
ladies
I
for
think she's the one. I'm like, until
men.
next week,
Yeah,
Torin.
God. But this is the big one for the pattern, right? The people that you date
Mhm.
that you're like, oh, like, why do I always attract like a-holes or like people who like hate their parents or like whatever it is, right? That is a behavioral pattern that you're repeating. You're finding a different version of the same person in some way, shape, or form. For whatever reason, you're doing it. I am the guilty as charged.
My favorite song with you is "I Don't F With You," because I wake up every day and I celebrate. Why? Because I just dodged a bullet from a crazy chick. I stuck to my guns. That's what made me.
Yeah.
That is.
God.
I've known you since 2016 to the present, and we can. You could sing that song. I
This
don't
is
F with
this has
you.
always been this has been a handicap of mine. I'm well aware.
And that's okay. That's a real thing. I
No,
mean,
but what I'm
right?
saying is,
Yeah.
right, of like I became aware of that pattern that I was repeating in terms of women that I dated. And like there were so many similar like characteristics, the way people went about certain things. Like there were a lot of parallels between my love life choices. And you see it in your friends. Everybody has their type, right? Well, that type thing is just a projection of something that's going on inside, right? Like what is it about that specific energy of that person or like that type of energy like has you so fixated on it? You know, it's like, dude, like why do you only eat like warheads? That's the only candy you like. Why? Like I don't get it. And then there's some childhood story about like the best time ever that you had. And then you get into the dating and it's some story about, you know, like mommy trauma or daddy trauma or whatever it may be that keeps you latched onto that type of energy because that's the type of energy that you didn't get or that you did get from a parent, you know, works both ways, that you either associate with being loved or with like trying to find it, right? So like my whole thing was like, I always seem to end up as the caretaker in a relationship. And that's
Isn't that
just like
wild? Yeah, but
that's just like an inherently natural thing for me. And like part of my bit is me like not asking for enough from other people, right? Like that's always been a big one for me of like, you know, I'll let somebody walk all over me. Not anymore. But somebody who could walk all over me, like, you know, basically could have taken everything that I owned from me, and I would have been fine if that person was happy.
right.
And I'm like, no, that is not a good
You have
way.
to evolve from that.
That is not a good way to go about life. You're literally willing to give away everything that like makes you special and unique,
Right.
and not celebrate that, but willing to sacrifice it all just to make sure somebody else is good.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
No. Like I got to make sure my cup's full
Well,
too.
you know what sets that off? The inciting incidents that sets that off is the realization that you're the type of personality, like as far as energy, you can give a whole bunch, and all you need is that little bit back. Because a little bit back, you can regenerate, and it makes you happy, and it's enough. But you're in these relationships, and the point of a relationship, where you're not even getting that little bit back, and then it happens to you, and that circular action where your circular patterns, like you're back where you started from, fix it. You're back where you started from, fix it. You evolve, or you do not. Right? In this case, you did. You know. And whatever inciting incident or foreshadowing that allowed you to, I'm not going to say you saw that coming, so I won't use the word foreshadowing, but the inciting incident or incidents that made you evolve from that puts you in this current position where, trust me, Torin, I know when you're happy and when you're not. Yeah, you are more happier now. Now you're not completely happy, but you're more happier now than you were in those relationships where you just asked for just a little bit back, which for at that time was more than enough, and you weren't even getting that, you know. And this is, again, this is just my life experience. I was raised by women. I'm surrounded by women like my entire life. I'm the only guy that grew up. My real father I never knew. Military, the unit I served was 60% women, right? Marymount Manhattan was an all-girls school before it became a guy school, right? Half the guys are gay, so I'm outnumbered 13-1. So for me, just being around women and understanding what they want and understanding how much what they're willing to give, maybe not women as a monolith, but like as a person, just made me understand that, because we're talking about a heterosexual relationship, right? So that's the best way now to describe it. And the reason why, again, the reason why I wanted with Kelly is because I can hang out with any woman, but like to sacrifice my time, and this is where it relates to you, hours, this finite amount of time you have during a 24-hour day. What do you bring? What do they bring to the table that's different from every other woman you talk to every day? Right? That's just me. That somehow translates to you, you know? And if it's enough, it's enough. And when it isn't, you got to change it as if your life depends on it, because it really does. Because it really does, you know? So, um, and that's the cool thing about just understanding relationships, understanding oneself. But I appreciate us thinking out loud and trying to negotiate having this something like a graspable given set of circumstances that will
I
allow
think
allow people to take this
to
spiritual
kind of
path.
like sum it all
Mhm.
up, because there's a lot of different ways, I could explain this from a bunch of different spiritual perspectives, but it's just like, just have more
Mm.
awareness in your life of like what transpires, like pay attention. That's the big one that really, I don't want to say drives me up a wall, because I understand that it's just like a coalition of choices that somebody's made in order to get where they're at in their life, and I can't change that for anyone. I can't make anybody do anything, but awareness and knowledge, and awareness specifically, especially the way things are happening right now, is so powerful. I mean, have you tried to be in a coffee shop and just sit there for like 5 minutes? No phone, no book. Just look around what happens in a coffee shop for 5 minutes of your time. Just sit there. The level of awareness that people display, not everybody, obviously, blanket statement here, but it's gone down a lot. Like, people are so out of it, so distracted by phones, whatever screen we've got. I mean, I used to love driving. I hate driving now. It's like, kind of gives me anxiety because so many people are just not paying attention. And like, to me, awareness is, you know, the the big one for all the battles,
Well,
is if you become aware of
yeah.
something, right?
And you see where the technology is that's designed to help us do this in many ways hurts us, right? Like, my theater professor, his name is Richard Niles, who I did not like very much, but brought up a very good point. He said when he grew up in New York, we would take walks just to walk, right? And he says it devolved into this place where you're taking a walk. It's because you have a destination to go to. You there's a point A and point B, and when you see a lot of people walking now, that's there. But and he's like, it seems like people don't take walks anymore just to walk. And I appreciated that, and I really took that with me. Like Kelly and I, pretty much 5 o'clock every day. Before we have to take the nanny home or whatever, we take the path or we walk on a strand, like, or sometimes Kelly do it without me, because that's my nap time too. But it's so cool that we took that realization, and like you said, no phones, no music. Just sometimes I talk her poor little ear till it falls off, and sometimes neither one of us say anything. We're just walking, and
I don't know
it.
if I believe that you didn't say anything, but
Oh yeah, I'm a shapeshifter. That's I'm a super generator. So, as far as Ashley classified me accurately. I'm a super generator. So I can shapeshift. I can adapt to these environments. You serve in the military when you speak only when you're spoken to, right? You got to be quiet, right? Being on a podcast will incite me or inspire me to talk more than not, right? And there's that. But I can spend enormous, exorbitant amounts of time alone with nobody, or I can be karaoke, surrounded by everybody, and there's a value and enjoyment in all of those things because that's life. That's life, And then I'm at Starbucks where I need people around me, but at the same time, I don't want anyone talking to me. So it's crazy you mentioned coffee shops because I think Starbucks was created for people like me. I think that's weird because I can't do business here in this office.
No,
I'm going to
the
pay my
same.
taxes. I already missed the filing deadline. Hear that, IRS? I missed you. Fourth year in a row. But yeah, it's very strange that in order for me to get going, I have to be in this place for this 20 minutes, 30 minutes to get my day started where I can practice plan for private lessons, the club team evolution, just, I still have, believe it or not, I still have some places I have to be at a certain time on certain days. I'm glad. I'm glad. And I'm only saying that out loud because for 17 years, I had to play a place I had to be at 9 and wasn't allowed to leave until 5. All right. So I wish everybody that same kind of freedom.
No, it's pretty
Yeah.
cool when you find it, man. My
Yeah.
life's been turned upside down in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
but
But you see how some people need that though?
I definitely
Do you see how
that.
no, you don't, and I don't. But
Oh no, I
I
needed it
have
to.
people who have, family to support, and they're like, dude, just tell me when I'm supposed to show up, tell me what I'm supposed to do, tell me when I get to leave. Boom. That this given set of circumstances that allows them to whatever. Some people need that structure. And for a long time, because I grew up a blue collar, from a blue collar family, my dad's in ironwork and my mom's a paralegal secretary. If you didn't have that, then what are you a man? What are you doing, right? Did you quit your job? Do you have another job lined up? So, in Brooklyn, we have this thing. You can't quit your job unless you have a job, So when this crazy epiphany, when my boss retired, I'm looking for work. And I'm like, why? Why? Go coach. And this during the season, be there at that time. And that job doesn't pay, coach, get 2 coaching jobs, fine.
Yeah, figure it out your way.
Yeah, I got a sugar mommy too, so that helps. But you want to talk about volleyball at all? Did you see Huntington Beach?
No.
Or no, okay.
I have not.
I
don't even know what's happening in
no.
volleyball. I know it's being played. That's about where I am right now.
Again, that is the most liberating way to approach it. It's freeing. No, but it's freeing to think of it in that respect. And for me, who currently I'm not coaching anyone on the tour, I'm just coaching juniors. Like a lot of my kids are in college, and during the off season and this that they want tons of private lessons. So I'm always going to have work. And again, I don't mean to be arrogant or whatever. I've never in my entire coaching career, except 2 times in my entire coaching career, and I've been coaching since 98, I've never had a job that I had to go to them for the job. They've all come to me. That it's John Mayer. The only person I came to them, Duncan Avery, evolution. The coolest human being on the face of the planet, an absolute mensch. He's the only guy I came to for a job and evolution. And I came there and I did it twice. So I mean, the cream rises to the top, right? If you are what you say, you are a superstar, and the spiritual path, you're to me, you're a rock star. I was looking forward to having this conversation. That's why, some people say they want you on the podcast and they're like, I don't know, this and that day. You're just like Tuesday, noon. Boom, done. There's value in these conversations. So, well, for me, because I like to talk to everybody, but
well, the way I see it is,
yeah,
one person takes away some little piece of information that can help change their life based on, whatever came out of one of our mouths. then I have done my job in terms of service to humanity. And
Yeah.
that's all my goal is for any of this, like I love talking about these things, and I don't think that I know more or less than anyone. It's just more along the lines of this is what my life, this is the direction my life is taken. And it's just like,
God bless, dude.
Nothing feels better than when I get to like sit down and, just start talking like universal principles.
Yeah. And the only reason why I even keep bringing it back to volleyball is because the players have are now and always will pick up the phone and say yes. And so no matter what my personal feelings are, professional feelings, because they're lucky this is personal, we're professional, I bury everybody. The good old boys club, the people that run the organization, the people that make decisions I agree with, the people that make decisions I disagree with, they have a way of weaponizing people against each other, right? Like I saw Sean Cook complaining that he has to qualify for the league or whatever, and Paul Ottman basically is long thing, stop being such a baby, like if you are this and that. So they're back and forth on the internet chatting with each other, and that's what happens. You start weaponizing people that didn't really do anything wrong. Like for a while, I was like, screw volleyball, screw these players, and I'm the other side of me is like, what? The guys that helped make this podcast for you, screw them. So this is me thinking out loud, but the inner conversation, right? Guys who don't like you that came on anyway because they knew it was good for business. Guys that did like you, that appreciate the work you're doing, that picked up. So for me, this podcast will always have an open invitation to players. I owe them that. There is no Option Podcast without them. Or maybe there is, but it doesn't. The brand, very much like Joe Rogan with comedians. Come on, man. It's not like Rogan doesn't have a political podcast. Look at his last 50 guests. How many politicians? One. The other 48 are comedians because that's what made him, So I bring it back to volleyball because I was there. I taped some games. Evan Corey played well. Theo Brunner is now playing with Troy Field. That's not working out well, but I'm optimistic. If not, hopefully it will. Leandro's their coach, and if Leandro's half the coach I think he is, not even like half, they'll be all right. Tony Rodriguez has a automatic in because they won the league. She's playing with America's favorite sweetheart. Who's Eric Baranik's girlfriend again? Jeannie Orengo. Yeah. So the men, Chase and Miles Evans won, so they're having auto in. Phil's doing his farewell tour. He's retiring this year. And I really love athletes that say they're going to retire at the end of the year because now these stops at the venues will put butts in seats because, hey, dude, this is the last time. Very much like Kobe. What? Mm-hmm. This is the last time I'm going to get to see Kobe. He's at the Nets game. And the thing we like about Kobe is he's never scratched himself from the lineup. Right?
Yeah.
How many this is why we don't like sports, right? Like you can go to a venue like, oh, cool, I get to watch, LeBron James or whatever. And then you find out like 3 starters are scratched from the lineup. You paid all that money, and like Valentine's Day, my wife's an avid Spurs fan. And that Tim Duncan, Kawhi Leonard, Ginobili, and Parker did not play. 4 of the starters. I was a Nets fan at the time, and it was Garnett and Paul Pierce. I'm like, cool. So Valentine's Day, the winner was me, but and that's the last time I'm going to talk about volleyball because I just tried twice to bring it back up and it's not really, not really catching to our narrative. But
there's one. Yeah. I actually I was having a conversation with somebody about coaching,
right?
And how beach volleyball is like, first of all, I think beach volleyball is inherently one of the most like spiritual sports.
Amen.
And if there was like a scale for it, if you will, but just it's
the highest on that scale.
Yeah, it's definitely up there. But I'd throw like tennis, like wrestling, some of those other individual sports like swimming, that you really got it's like you against you all the time. Like there's definitely up there as well.
They build different characters, right? Like sports build, like for example, I believe wrestling builds character. I'm going to interrupt you. Like all of our presidents were best presidents were former wrestlers.
Right. I did just like it in terms of like it's literally just you and one other person, and there's so many different things that you can like teach from watching like a beach volleyball team from a time that they have success to a time that they don't have success, in terms of energetic principles of like how they work, right? Like they play out like on the physical plane. And it's perfect because, you know, it's a two-person team. So you can make the argument that, you know, with the principle of gender, right? Not men and women, but everything has masculine and feminine energies in it.
Right.
Right? Everything in existence. Is that at times there's always going to be one person who takes on the more masculine energy in the partnership, and there's be times when the other person is the more feminine
Right.
energy, right?
No, that's a good way
Now-
to draw the picture to get everybody to kind
Right.
of get it.
So like the feminine energy it's a bit darker, it's more receptive, it's more of like that like creative, like, you know, like art driven,
And also
receptive,
camaraderie driven.
camaraderie, right? Masculine energies is like hot. It's more outwardly driven. It's more like go out and do in
Leadership.
the world. Leadership, exactly. Now, each person has a balance of both of these energies, like within themselves, and how that balances with one another gets very, very interesting to me because, again, like we were talking about the other day, of like, you know, you'll have some weird stuff from like middle school come up after you shank a couple of balls, and you're like, why is my high school coach yelling at me in my ear right now? I only shanked 2 balls. And you're like the like trauma response and those things that get brought up, right? Well, there's going to be the things that by playing with this one person that are going to trigger both positive and negative aspects of yourself by just being in their energy, right? And the same thing vice versa. So if you can start to look at things as a coach in terms of how the energies are working between two individuals that are competing towards the same common goal, and learn how to teach your players how to balance them as they ebb and flow based on, you know, like whatever's happening, right? So for example, the person getting served the majority of the match, I would put them in the category of this person in this specific situation is behaving in the more masculine way of like, okay, I need to go inside out, right? So your person who's not getting served is going to behave more on the feminine side of that situation of, okay, they're more receptive, supportive, I don't want to say like mothering, but mothering in that sense of like, you know, they got to be like maybe a bit more of like a cheerleader or like communicative, right? Whatever that looks like for that partnership. But those are how those energies start to play out. And then the pendulum can swing the other way. The other person starts to get served, right? And then all of a sudden you have this shift of one person that has to behave in a more masculine way, one person that has to behave in a more feminine way. And what happens as these energies start to pendulum back and forth throughout the course of, you know, a match, right? Like what happens, like what happened in this moment when X, Y, and Z happened, you know, that caused Torin to become unbalanced and, you know, give up like 4 points in a row. Like what was going through your mind, what was happening to your body, like all those things you can start to pick apart like after the match to really start to pinpoint, okay, like, ooh, like I had this very triggering moment of when, you know, when Franklin, my partner, like when he pulled too early on this block and yada yada yada. Like I had a partner who always used to leave the net open, and like I hate that, you know. Like you can start to get into those like
for hoping.
Yeah.
Good luck.
But you can start to, if people are open to that level of like one psychological camaraderie, right? Of like, can you be totally honest with this person, and to like how something makes you feel in the moment and communicate that, but not also be reactive to that feeling, right? Like this is strictly business, you know. We can break it down and learn to teach in terms of energy, how to properly manipulate it to your benefit for the entirety of a match, as opposed to the traditional like X's and X's and O's of, you know, like we got to serve this down the line, we got to do this, we got to do this, we got to do this. Like,
And that's what separates
yeah,
real coaches. Um, you're in yoga class, right? And your instructor put you in this position that allowed you to get to this place of comfortable vulnerability, right? But not everybody that does yoga can teach it, right? And this has been my argument with a lot of these active players who are coaching clinics, and some of these active players who are coaching private lessons. And they're rarely going to be wrong on the X's and O's, but they're missing a plethora of the mental as far as teaching is concerned, right? On a common denominator scale, on a results driven thing. For me, if I go to someone that I used to coach juniors and they're on the professional scene and they see me and they break character for like 3 seconds, oh my God, hi, right? And they're in the middle of a game, like in between volleys, I did my job because I didn't just teach them volleyball. I gave them something that made them better human beings. I gave them something that allowed them to progress from that teenage time, because I was coaching 12s, 13s, and 14s, to the young adult, to a full adult. With they look at me and in 3 paragraphs, I understand because it is blah 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 blah, and then back to play. 3 paragraphs in 3 seconds, just from like them seeing you. That's how I know as a results driven person, because I'm a Bill Parcells guy. Results, either you can do it or you can't. That I did my job, but I understood the journey of teaching and teaching and coaching at the same time. You know, I am a former player. But my first 6 years, I could coach men because men were easy. You could just give them a kick in the butt. They look for a leader to follow, the X's and O's, and you'll have some success. But women, I spent 5 seasons where these girls did everything I asked, and they still sucked. So right, but why? Why? Because at that time, I didn't realize that playing and coaching are different occupations. Commentating is a different occupation, right? Uh, there are people that have more volleyball credentials than me that do not have the ability to communicate the way I do. And they're two different worlds. Remember, I said in the beginning, in this world, I'm Michael Jackson, you're Tito, right? So Eric Cam, what's up, man? I'm gonna read your comment in a minute, but I'm glad you brought that up, because I always say a player that coaches can very rarely hurt your game. They're just levels to how much they can help. Do they help this much? Are they a natural, right? And defy everything I just said, make me sound like I'm full of crap, and wind up being like a great coach year one, like Jason Kidd, or you know what I'm saying, or you know, some of those other Kevin Nash, or not Kevin Nash, Steve Nash, right? I'm talking basketball because that's your wheelhouse too. And some of them will make liars out of me, but I like my percentages. I like my chances. And again, this is coming from someone that's been doing this for like, when you ask me how long I was doing this, I went like this. And you're like, dude, that long, right? And not from I'm up here or whatever, but from years of making mistakes, years of understanding and failing, and that circular action where you get back right where you started from, because that's the life cycle. Nope. You're back where you started from, fix it. You're back where you started from, fix it. You're back where you started from, fix it. Right? And this, good, we found a way to talk about volleyball on a level where we're Michael Jackson and they're Tito. But yeah, it's teaching. It's not just coaching, it's teaching, you know? And I guess as coaches, we have to find a way to not be emotionally invested in our players in a bad way where it hurts them and us. You asked me what my biggest strength in coaching is. I personalize my work. Be like, Jay, what's your weakest aspect of coaching? I personalize my work. It hurts too much. It hurts too much because you want it for them, right, Torin, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, because you're a giver. You want it for them, and when it doesn't happen for them, it hurts you. And we just went through 3 layers of coaching in like
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Let's be generous and say 5 minutes. I want to read Eric Can's comic. I coached high-level gymnastics for a decade, and in all of my interviews, Jesus, I gotta move this closer. All right, that's better. I coached high-level gymnastics for a decade, and in all my interviews for different clubs and colleges I worked for, I just described that I am not a coach and taught the sport as a technician. Eric Cam, and this is why you rock, and whenever you're ready to talk, you can come on the podcast. I know that's not your thing because you're more of a filmer. Your filmography is fantastic, and glad you're watching the show. It's Torin Jeffreys, man. It's my dude. He played volleyball and he stepped away to do life-saving things.
No one knows. I like the mystery.
Yeah, it's true, man. I'm just glad because when I met you, I was still an active player, and when I needed to play pickup or just get some reps in, you were always kind of there. And I was guys like you, Rob McLean, right? Faulkner at the time, right? How about Hagen Smith, right? And he was coming up back then. Cole Fears, right? There's Chris Flood, who's USA assistant coach and now at Pepperdine is the assistant coach. So just how cool is that? Like 8 people, 8 different directions. Hagen wound up being this savage. He won the ones. It was a single elimination tournament in Huntington. He won, so he's in the league.
Oh, nice.
So he won. Cole Fears is Eric Baranek teaching boys on the Strand. Not boys, girls. They have their own club. Rob is still a savage, and now he's traveling internationally with Jorge Martinez. Ooh. Chris Flood is assistant coach at Pepperdine. He should be the head coach because Sicoli's good, and I think in the end, and I'll say this bravely, I think Flood's going to be better. Who else? You? Good. Finding drinking water in the easiest way we know, and it's weird because it's as easy as the nose in your face, but as hard as climbing Mount Everest, right? Me, I feel like I'm the only one that like kind of stayed the same, except I have a podcast.
You changed a lot. We've all have. Yeah. When you think about it,
evolution, man. When you met, I didn't even have a kid, dude. Come on.
Yeah.
I got this 8-year-old towhead running around, and I'm not trying to crap on volleyball, but she ain't never gonna play volleyball if she wants to. I'm gonna get her Rob. Hell, I'll even fly Oz in from Florida or Cuba. I want someone that's strict. Someone that teaches her respect for the sport and respect for time, for other people's time, and can coach. Right? I believe growth, positive reinforcement and growth mindset is a good thing. And I believe tough love is a good thing. But I do not believe that championship teams exist on either one. John Mayer, I love John. He'll always win the WCCs. He will never win the NCAA championship. He's got a drama-free program, which for women's volleyball is impossible. Drama-free women's volleyball. I'm sounding like a sexist, but you know what's up. But guess what? You know what's going to happen? He's probably going to win this year, and then me and you are going to have to reassess this, and you're going to get that big spoon and be like, go ahead, Jay. I'm going to do the tour and eat all the words you said, Jason.
And I'll be like, where the drama kick in? That's
yes.
What happened?
Look, John might make a liar out of me this year. He gets all his recruits stolen, and he's still there. And yeah, Torin, I'm so glad you're my friend, dude. I'm so glad that
right back at you, dude.
Yeah, man. I'm so glad that we can do this. And I don't want to wrap up yet. I want to talk about have you read anything that's interesting that you want to share that you encourage other people to read? Like me, I'm just going to be honest up front. I hate reading. Reading is hard, but look behind you. 365 Days of Optimism. That's Wendy Jones. I read her thing. The Inspired Athlete. That's not a very thick book. That's Aaron Wexler. And I read that. And, he came in the podcast. You read the whole thing? I'm like, of course I read the whole thing. He's like, you must really love me because I know you don't like to read. Barack Obama is mixed race. So the chapter about him struggling with his identity and my black and my white was relatable to you and me. I mean, you could just read that chapter alone and walk away, be happy. Hate Inc. That's about how up and down politics makes the left and right hate each other. You have this wealthy class weaponizing us against each other. And yeah. So, oh, that one in the middle, Fight for the Wildest Ride for the White House, is a detailed thing about Joe Biden behind the scenes and his mental decline and how they had directional arrows where he's supposed to walk and stop. And it was, yeah,
World is a stage.
I know. Yeah. That's so anything interesting you read the last year or
The Kabbalion. That's a good one to start if you're interested in
the Kabbalion? Yeah.
principles of the universe.
I like that. How about anything on lucid body movement or anything on yoga or anything that people want a better spiritual understanding?
You always go with the autobiography of a yogi. That's a good one.
Yes.
The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali.
Yogi Arnan. He was on the podcast, by the way. Yep.
What else did
Man, I got that's all. I forgot that. It was so long ago. Like
there's so many good books out there.
I like The Lucid Body, written by Faye Simpson. She's published
that
on
one.
that. Yeah.
I haven't.
I had her for my college. She was my college professor.
The Mucusless Dieting System. That's an interesting read.
Okay.
It's about Arnold Ehret. I don't know if I'm saying his name right. He died in the 40s or the 50s. But he had this, I believe it was neurodegenerative disease back in the like 19...
I'm going to go screen on you to get some of these books. Okay.
19 something or other. But basically, I'd been to every doctor and they basically were all just the same, like, yeah, you're going to die. So, he basically was just like, all right, like I've tried everything else. Like I'm just not going to eat food and see what happens.
Let's F around and find out.
And the man cured himself.
Yeah, because fasting gets rid of non-essentials.
Yeah. So he went east to, like India, China, all these other, and studied up over there. And was just like, totally came back with this different understanding of, food and everything that we consume. That's a really good read about. It's actually about his like quote unquote like dieting system. Finding Ultra.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a story about he's the oldest person I think to ever finish, not only finish, but I think he has the world record for an ultra marathon.
Right.
He was a swimmer in college, but
he's the guy doing like that 120-mile runs like in Arizona and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, but he's like in his late 50s now.
Yeah.
Something like, but he went through that whole phase of like, went to college, could have been a world-class swimmer, but fast food, partying, drinking, like his body eventually started to like whatever. Over time, he like lost all his athletic stuff, was just miserable.
Yeah,
all this stuff.
They don't teach you how to eat, So that's also coaching, right?
Yeah.
Teach you how to jump, but don't teach you how to land, right? Yeah. Don't teach you how to eat. Come on, what's up?
He eventually found like ultra marathons.
Nice.
And he totally went like raw vegan, like only raw food, nothing cooked. Yeah. This and that. And the man now has, he got the world record for an ultra marathon.
And he extended his life.
And in his mid 40s.
And he extended his life.
Yeah.
He tacked on 20 more years of his life.
Oh, easily.
Because of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a guy named David Smith who does some of those runs with him in New York. We used to give him an exercise treadmill exam, for his heart rate or whatever, and this and that. And he would draw small crowds. Like the nurses would leave the examination room and everyone would crowd in the treadmill room and just watch this guy run on the upscale. We're looking at his heart rate.
It doesn't.
And we, at the time I was doing like filing and attending physician statements and I'm in the room and you got like 8 people on the staff looking in the treadmill room. And he's just, And he
So
was 61 years old. Was some wildness, dude. And I think he's part of that group too. His name is David Smith. Something about those Dave Smiths, man.
mhm.
You know, we got Dave Smith, who's a volleyball guy, right? Colorado. We got a Dave Smith, who's like a libertarian, who's like the secretary of making sense. You know, and yeah, I was I. The reason why I asked is because I'm doing the lightning rounds, but I think some of these lightning rounds deserve some time instead of just like a knee jerk reaction of
Yeah, yeah,
last go book you, right? His favorite comedian, right? Favorite comedian is probably still Chappelle, right? So
yeah. Or Bill Burr. It's always been back and
Bill
forth
Burr. Too. I like what he did to Bill Maher. Oh, look at you, tough guy. Yeah, you're gonna go out there and ranger up, grab a weapon? No, you're not. Shut up. You know, that's him, right?
yeah.
I'm Chappelle till the wheels fall off. Last good. Any decent movie, recent movie that you watched on TV or on stream or in the theater? I do
Ooh,
want to watch the Jason Statham one. It's
I
I got to get my B movie on. It's called The Working Man, and I want to see
I
that, dude.
really liked the House of David on Amazon Prime.
House of
Was
David.
really good. Yeah,
You
there's
saw
like
that?
yeah, that was bomb.
Yeah.
That and my brother turned me back on to anime a little bit. I just watched the Devil May Cry that just
Yeah.
dropped on Netflix. That was pretty good.
That derives from a video game.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
How
That's why I
cool is
watched it.
how rad is that?
Yeah, and then I watched what was it called? Like the Arcane something. I don't know. It was pretty solid. I
Yeah.
haven't like watched a ton of TV lately, but I was on
Yeah.
vacation, so
Well, you know what happens? I get on the plane and I start binge watching. So I was watching a series called Emperor of Ocean Park. Well, Forrest Whitaker, without getting into the details. It was interesting. It was a bad storyline carried by just some awfully talented actors. And it's worth seeing it for the performance aspect alone and just this the moment to moment and scene rehearsal. It's for actors and it's for civilians. I really liked it. Yeah. Well,
I
that's
liked Rebel Moon. That was the one I
yeah.
watched. It was based on a couple books,
Mhm.
but that
Yeah.
was good. Premise, like world ending
Yeah.
ship shows up from like the Federation or whatever, and it's like, we need your resources. We're like, we can't do enough, and
Yeah.
it's a whole thing.
Last of Us is back. My wife loves that.
I haven't seen that.
She doesn't even like zombie movies. She watches that religiously, The Last of Us. And I told her, I said, that was a video game too.
Oh yeah.
And the second season is from The Last of Us 2, the video game. Which all of these games I'm talking about are behind you.
Yeah.
My big dirty little secret all stored in that the two cabinets there, just in there. And I've been a one video game person the last few months. The Avengers, Marvel's Avengers. I just really like it. It's my escapism. Because karaoke has not. I don't know. I haven't sang in a while, but I really want to get back out there. So anyone, what's your Insta handle? Because I think people are going to want to know more about this new venture you've been on.
It's
Yeah.
profit underscore of underscore. There's an underscore between.
Mm-hmm.
Prophet of the Lion's Heart 679. The 679 is attached to the.
It's also available on iTunes.
Yeah. Boo. Sorry. Go ahead. That was my closing credits thing. Sorry about that.
No, it's
Yeah.
Prophet
Mm-hmm.
of the Lion's Heart. There's an underscore in between every.
Okay. I'll put it up on
And 679 at the end of it.
No, good, because the audio version, right? They won't get to see that unless I tag it. So
yeah. So I do lives. I don't know, like a couple times a week. Just talk about whatever kind of comes on my brain of universal principles, truths. Like I talked about stuff in terms of like moving through fear and what role that might play in your life, and
I like it.
how the like weird ways that fear presents itself.
And it's to me it's valuable because almost all of this I'm hearing for the first time. All of this I know that you are well researched on, because these are the things you do like to read about and dialogue and talk about. And today I got the expert on. Let's go, Torin Jeffreys, people. I'm Jason DeBillius. That's Torin Jeffreys. We're gonna hit my music. Hey guys, thanks for having us, and we're out.
Come check out the Option Podcast on optiondb.com. It's also available on iTunes and Spotify and on YouTube under the NY Varsity Sports handle. You're going to love what you hear.
Let's end that.